Those are such wonderful questions. Those are some of the most interesting questions I got in the whole time.
Thank you so much.
I'm working on a novel. It is a story of my life and my sister's.
The movie starts at the end,
Yes.
when childhood is finished.
Yeah.
What did you make that choice?
Well, when I reread the book when I was an adult, and I loved the book when I was a kid. It was my favorite book, and Jo March was my favorite character. But when I read it as an adult, I found so much in it that was just totally modern and urgent and pressing. And in a way, I wanted to create a narrative which felt the way I felt reading it as an adult. Like I am looking back on their life, but also on my life. And so I wanted to explode the narrative and then put it back together again. Because in a way, it helped me also start weaving this idea of authorship into the movie, so that childhood became a bit of, is that what happened, or is that how you wrote it?
Like a comment on narrative.
Exactly. It's a comment on narrative. That's right.
Well, speaking of narrative, back in Mexico, where I'm from, women screenwriters, there's all this conversation about how to approach women's stories and female characters. What do you think the work how do you think the work of Louisa May Alcott and Little Women fits into that conversation?
Well, I think that she was one of the very first writers to show the lives of girls and women as valuable and worth writing about. And I think the act of writing about it or making films about it is part of what communicates to the audience that it's important enough to make a film about. It's important enough to get a crew and a cast together and to shoot this movie. And I think that sort of communication of importance is something that she did and that I try to continue to do with the movies I make, because they are just as important as male stories. You wouldn't know it from the amount of movies, but it is really something that I feel called to do.
Do you think there's this male view in the way we see the things that the screenwriters write? Because we have a lot of female scriptwriters in Mexico that are told that their stories don't have a lot of action in it.
Oh, yeah.
Is that
Really?
part of the same problem?
Oh, yes. Well, it's so funny. That's in a funny way, that's exactly why I started the movie with Jo having a conversation with her publisher, Dashwood, and he says, make it short and spicy, and, morals don't sell nowadays. And this kind of like, she's writing these sort of scandal tales. And I took that almost word for word from the book. And I truly felt like when I was reading it, I thought, that could be me sitting in front of a studio head yesterday. I have these conversations all the time. And I think whether it's, action or violence or some sort of male narrative of power, I think it's not always obvious to men what the story is if it doesn't follow something that they know. So I think that's why it's critical that, that not only that there are women writers and women directors, but also women producers and women studio heads, and that they also be in charge of the modes of production.
I remember there's a passage in the book also where Jo gets very frustrated because she publishes her first novel, and the criticism is really frustrated because she can't learn anything from it.
Yes, that's so great. I love that section too. Yes, it's a great section.
I wanted to ask you, Ladybird being your first output there, what was the experience for you with the comment section?
Oh, God. Well, listen, I think the truth is the wonderful thing about the internet is that everybody has a platform to talk and have dialogue. And the hard thing about it as an artist is if you want to, you can find every person who doesn't like your movie and all the ways they don't like it. And so, I think you have to be judicious as an artist. I love that section actually in Little Women where she writes the book and then she gets bad reviews, because part of what feels so bad to her is that she'd made all these compromises in the book because, you know, because of the publisher. She took out this here, she took out that there, and then all of a sudden her book didn't really look like her book, and then it also got panned, which is the nightmare, you know, is that you change the thing because they tell you you should, and then people still don't like it. So that's why, in a way, I try to always make the film that I love best, because then people can hate it, but hey, at least I like it. At least I made what I wanted. Because if I try to guess what people will like and make something I don't understand and they still don't like it, then you really feel like crud.
So, who does she marry?